Miami sunlight glinted off champagne glasses, while somewhere beneath silk tablecloths and forced smiles, a girl named Simone Vale realized she'd just become collateral in a war she never asked to fight. 23 years old, Stanford dropout, tech prodigy turned trophy wife. Her new husband wouldn't even look at her during their own wedding reception. Not because he didn't see her, but because acknowledging her existence meant admitting he'd just signed away the last piece of his humanity for territorial control over East Coast shipping routes. This is the story of a marriage built on lies, survival, and the dangerous moment two people stopped pretending indifference could protect them from destroying each other. If you want to see how far love can bend before it breaks completely, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Simone Vale learned she was getting married the same week her startup pitch got rejected by every venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. 23 years old, standing in her father's study inside their Coral Gables mansion, staring at a man who'd built an empire moving everything from luxury cars to controlled substances through Miami's port system, and he was telling her about duty like it was supposed to make the betrayal hurt less. "The Kangs control Atlanta and half of Savannah," her father said, not looking at her, never looking at her when the decisions were already made. "This alliance secures our position for the next 20 years. "I don't care about your position," Simone said, voice flat, hands gripping the edge of his mahogany desk hard enough her knuckles went white. "I'm not doing this." Her father finally met her eyes. Cold, businesslike. The same expression he used during negotiations with corrupt port officials and cartel intermediaries. "Yes," he said quietly. "You are." 3 weeks later, she walked down an aisle lined with men carrying concealed weapons beneath tailored suits. The Kim estate sprawled across waterfront property worth $40 million, white marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, security cameras hidden inside decorative sconces. 200 guests filled the garden pavilion, politicians, lawyers, corporate executives whose companies existed solely for money laundering, crime families from New York, Atlanta, Los Angeles, everyone pretending this was about love instead of logistics. Simone's dress cost $60,000. Custom Vera Wang. Silk so fine it felt like water against her skin. Her mother had cried during the final fitting, but not from happiness. From relief that at least one daughter would be protected, provided for, secured inside a world where women rarely got choices, but occasionally got safety. Simone's younger sister Ivy sat in the third row, 17 years old, watching with the kind of wide-eyed terror that came from understanding she might be next. At the altar, Riker Kang waited like a man attending a corporate board meeting. Simone had met him exactly twice before today. Once at a formal dinner where he'd spoken 4 sentences total. Once at the contract signing where lawyers outnumbered family members 3-1. Both times he'd looked at her the way someone might assess a painting they were obligated to purchase. Detached professional evaluation, nothing more. He was tall, 6'3", maybe 6'4", broad-shouldered in the way that came from genetics and violence, not Jim's, sharp-featured. Korean-American, second generation, born in Atlanta before his family consolidated power across the Southeast. Dark eyes that gave away absolutely nothing. 40 years old, though he looked younger in the right light and ancient in others. He wore a black Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. He did not smile when she reached him. The officiant, some retired judge her father had bought years ago, started the ceremony with practiced efficiency. Love, honor, cherish. Words that meant nothing here. Legal binding masquerading as romance. Simone's hands shook when Riker slid the ring onto her finger. White gold. 3-carat diamond, cold as ice against her skin. His hands were steady. She hated him for that. "You may kiss the bride." Riker's mouth barely brushed hers. A technicality. Over before it began. Then 200 people applauded like they'd just witnessed something beautiful instead of a transaction with a marriage license attached. The reception blurred together. Champagne she didn't drink, food she couldn't taste. Her father giving a toast about family and legacy and partnership while Riker stood beside her like a statue carved from stone. Guests kept approaching, congratulating them, making jokes about honeymoons and grandchildren that landed like threats. Simone smiled until her face hurt. At one point, she excused herself to the bathroom just to breathe. The estate had 12 bathrooms. She chose one near the library, far from the reception noise, locked the door, pressed her forehead against the cool marble sink, and tried not to think about the fact that her entire life had just been dismantled in under 4 hours. She stayed there for 10 minutes before guilt about appearances dragged her back out. That's when she heard the voices. The library door was cracked open. Low conversation, men's voices. She recognized one immediately, Riker's, cold, precise, the kind of tone that didn't allow interruption. "I don't need complications," he was saying. "This marriage is strategic, nothing more." Another voice responded, older, rougher. She seems young," Riker cut him off, "sheltered. Probably thinks this life is some romantic Mafia fantasy instead of what it actually is." Simone froze in the hallway. "You worried she can't handle it?" the other man asked. "I'm worried she'll expect things I can't give," Riker said flatly. "I need loyalty, not some girl pretending our arrangement is a love story." Silence. Then, "You want me to keep distance protocols in place?" "Yes. Separate wings, minimal interaction outside public events. She gets security, financial access, everything agreed upon in the contract. But I'm not pretending this is something it isn't." The words landed like bullets. Simone's chest tightened. Breathing suddenly required effort. She'd known the marriage wasn't real. Had known since the day her father sat her down and explained that refusing meant jeopardizing everything: her mother's safety, Ivy's future, the tenuous peace between families that kept Miami from turning into a war zone. But hearing it spoken out loud, clinical and cold, shredded something inside her she didn't know still existed. Some stupid, desperate part of her had hoped, what? That a man 15 years older who'd agreed to marry a stranger for territorial access might magically develop feelings? That forced proximity might turn into something real? She was an idiot. Simone turned and walked back toward the reception before anyone could see her, smiled, laughed at appropriate moments, pretended everything was fine, while her new husband avoided looking at her for the rest of the night. The party finally ended near midnight. Guests filtered out in waves, some drunk, some calculating, all satisfied they'd witnessed the consolidation of power between two families who now controlled 80% of shipping infrastructure from Miami to Charleston. A car waited outside. Black Maybach. Bulletproof glass. Driver who'd worked for the Kangs for 20 years and had probably killed at least a dozen people. Riker held the door open for her, polite, distant. They didn't speak during the 40-minute drive to his estate. Estate felt like the wrong word. Fortress was more accurate. The property sat on Star Island, gated community where every neighbor was either a celebrity or a criminal, often both. The house itself looked like something out of Architectural Digest, modern, angular, all glass and white stone. Security embedded in every corner, cameras, motion sensors, armed guards patrolling the perimeter 24/7. Inside, everything felt cold despite the expensive furniture and original artwork probably worth 8 figures total. Riker led her through the main floor. Living room, kitchen bigger than most apartments, home theater, wine cellar, indoor pool. He stopped outside a bedroom suite on the second floor. "This is yours," he said. "Private bathroom, walk-in closet. Your belongings were moved in this afternoon." Simone stared at the door, then at him. "Where's your room?" she asked quietly. "West Wing." He gestured vaguely down the opposite hallway. "You need anything, kitchen staff is available 24/7. Security office is downstairs. Any concerns, they'll contact me." He said it like he was giving a hotel guest instructions. Something inside Simone snapped. "I heard you," she said. Riker went very still. "What?" At the reception, in the library. Her voice came out steady despite the adrenaline suddenly flooding her system. "I heard everything you said about me." For the first time all day, his expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "Simone, don't." She stepped back when he moved forward. "You want distance? Fine. You want separate lives? Perfect. But don't stand here and pretend you're being considerate when we both know you just don't want to deal with the inconvenience of a wife you were forced to marry." His jaw tightened. "That's not—" "I don't care," Simone cut him off. Voice harder now, sharper. "You made yourself clear. This is a transaction. I'm collateral. So let's stop pretending either of us wanted this and just survive it." She turned and walked into the bedroom before he could respond. Locked the door. leaned against it while her heart tried to break through her ribcage. On the other side, silence, then footsteps, walking away. Simone slid down to the floor and finally let herself feel the full weight of what her life had just become. 3 months passed like living in a museum. Simone occupied the east wing of the estate. Riker stayed in the west. They crossed paths maybe twice a week, usually in the kitchen early morning when both had insomnia and pretended the other wasn't there. He left for work before sunrise most days, returned after dark. She heard him sometimes. Phone calls conducted in Korean, footsteps on marble floors, the occasional sound of breaking glass quickly cleaned up by staff who knew better than to ask questions. She filled her days with nothing, reading, swimming, walking the property under the watch of security personnel who followed her everywhere but never spoke. Sometimes she'd sit by the floor-to-ceiling windows in the main living room and watch boats drift across Biscayne Bay while wondering if she could just walk out the front gate and disappear. She never tried, because disappearing meant her family paid the price, and despite everything, Simone wasn't willing to trade her freedom for their destruction. Ivy called twice a week. Cheerful, oblivious, talking about senior year drama and college applications like Simone's life hadn't become a beautiful prison. Simone never told her the truth. Let her little sister believe the Instagram post showing designer clothes and oceanfront sunsets meant happiness. Their parents called once a month, duty check-ins. "How are you settling in?" her mother would ask, voice tight with guilt she'd never acknowledge. "Fine," Simone always said. Fine. The loneliest word in any language. But then small things started appearing. Her favorite tea, some obscure Taiwanese oolong she'd mentioned once during the contract signing meeting, suddenly stocked in the kitchen. Fresh delivery every week. Books she'd talked about wanting to read showed up on her nightstand. First editions, carefully selected. Museum memberships arrived in the mail. PAM the Bass, Paris Art Museum, all providing private after-hours access she'd casually mentioned enjoying years ago to someone, though she couldn't remember who. At first, she thought it was staff being efficient. Then she realized the pattern. Every single thing was something she'd mentioned exactly once in Riker's presence. He was listening, watching, paying attention in ways she'd never noticed. The security detail around her doubled without explanation. Men in dark suits trailing her every movement. To the gym, the grocery store she didn't need to visit because staff handled everything. The rare lunch with Ivy at some overpriced brickole restaurant. One afternoon, she confronted the head of security, a man named Chen, who'd worked for the Kang since Riker was a teenager. "Why do I need 6 guards to get coffee?" she asked. Chen's expression stayed neutral. "Mr. Kang's orders. Is there a threat I should know about?" Mr. Kang prefers proactive protection. Non-answers. Professional deflection. But something in his tone made Simone wonder if maybe the threat was real and nobody wanted to scare her by admitting it. She started paying closer attention. Noticed the same black Escalade parked 3 cars behind hers whenever she left the estate. Different driver each time, but always the same vehicle. Started appearing 6 weeks into the marriage. Noticed the way Chen's team positioned themselves at restaurants. Always exit routes covered. Always sightlines maintained. Always ready for something. Noticed the tension in staff conversations when they thought she wasn't listening. Whispers about territory disputes and Chin family pushing boundaries and the bosses handling it. Victor Chin. Simone knew the name. Hard not to in Miami's underworld, rival syndicate based out of Broward County, expanding aggressively into Dade. Old grudge with the Kangs going back decades. Something about a betrayal and a body that never got recovered. She'd overheard her father mention it once. Warning about volatility, unpredictability, the kind of enemy who didn't follow rules. Simone tried asking Riker about it one night when they accidentally ran into each other in the kitchen near midnight. He was pouring whiskey. She was making chamomile tea because sleep wouldn't come. "Is something going on I should know about?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "No. Chen doubled my security detail." "Precaution." "For what?" "Nothing you need to worry about." He drained the whiskey in one swallow, started to leave. "Riker." He stopped, didn't turn around. "If I'm in danger," Simone said quietly, "I'd rather know than be protected through ignorance. For a long moment, he stood there, shoulders tight, hand gripping the empty glass. Then, "You're not in danger as long as you stay close to security." He left before she could press further, but the way he'd said it, flat, controlled, like he was trying to convince himself as much as her, made Simone's stomach turn. Dorset. The attack happened on a Thursday. Simone had lunch plans with Ivy at some trendy Wynwood cafe their little sister had been begging to try. Riker's head of security had cleared it 3 days in advance, route mapped, backup teams positioned, restaurant vetted, owner paid off for discretion. Chen drove. 2 additional SUVs followed, one ahead, one behind. Standard protocol now. Standard. Ivy chattered nonstop during lunch. College acceptances, scholarship offers. Some boy in her AP literature class who kept staring at her. Normal 17-year-old concerns that felt like transmissions from another planet. Simone smiled and nodded and tried to remember when her own life had felt that simple. They left the restaurant near 3 p.m. Miami heat hit like walking into a wall. Chen held the door while Simone slid into the back seat, Ivy climbing in beside her, still talking about whether USC or NYU had the better film program. The Escalade pulled into traffic, made it 4 blocks before everything detonated. The first gunshot shattered the rear windshield into a spiderweb of cracks. Ivy screamed. Chen slammed the accelerator as automatic weapons fire erupted from somewhere behind them. The bulletproof glass held, but the noise was deafening, metal on metal, percussion sounds that turned Simone's bones into tuning forks. "Get down," Chen shouted. Simone grabbed Ivy and pulled her sister to the floorboard, covering her body with her own. More gunfire. The SUV swerved violently, throwing them against the door panel. Simone's shoulder hit hard enough to send pain shooting down her arm. Ivy was crying, gasping, clutching Simone's shirt. "It's okay," Simone heard herself saying. It's okay. We're okay." She didn't believe it. Chen's voice cut through the chaos, rapid-fire commands into his radio. "Shots fired on Northwest 2nd Avenue, heading south toward the expressway. We need extraction now." The Escalade's engine roared. They blew through a red light, horns blaring, civilians scattering. Behind them, a black Mercedes was gaining ground, passenger window down, muzzle flashes visible even in daylight. Another burst of gunfire tore through the rear bumper. The SUV lurched. Something vital had been hit. Chen cursed in Mandarin and wrenched the wheel hard right, cutting through a gas station parking lot. The backup vehicles were trying to box out the attackers, but more cars were appearing. Coordinated assault, professional execution. This wasn't random. This was planned. Simone's phone buzzed against her hip. She fumbled it out with shaking hands. "Riker." She answered without thinking. "Where are you?" His voice cut through the line like a blade. Not calm, not controlled, raw and sharp and barely restrained. "They're shooting at us." Simone's voice cracked. "Ivy's with me. I don't know where." "Chen!" Riker's voice turned into a roar. "Put Chen on now!" Simone stretched forward, phone shaking. Chen grabbed it without taking his eyes off the road. "Sir, under fire on 2nd Avenue. 3 vehicles in pursuit. They're herding us toward the warehouse district." Whatever Riker said made Chen's face go hard. "Copy that. ETA, 12 minutes. He threw the phone back to Simone and yanked the wheel left, sending them into a controlled drift that made Ivy scream again. They were in industrial territory now, shipping warehouses, empty lots, chain-link fences topped with barbed wire. The attackers followed like wolves. More gunfire. The rear tire blew. The Escalade shuddered, but Chen kept driving, sparks flying from the rim grinding against asphalt. They turned into a narrow service road between 2 massive buildings, 30 feet wide maybe. Concrete walls on both sides, dead end ahead. But Chen didn't slow down. He drove straight toward a rolling security gate that was lifting open, 2 of Riker's backup teams positioned on the other side with assault rifles raised. The Escalade screamed through the opening. The gate slammed down immediately. Behind them, the pursuing Mercedes tried to follow but couldn't stop in time. It crashed into the security gate with a metallic shriek. Men poured out, weapons raised. Riker's teams opened fire. The gunfight lasted maybe 90 seconds but felt infinite. Simone kept her body over Ivy, eyes squeezed shut, listening to her sister sob while bullets chewed apart the world outside. Then silence. Not quiet, Sirens wailing in the distance, car alarms screaming, people shouting commands. But the shooting stopped. Chen killed the engine, turned in his seat, blood running down the side of his face from a glass cut. "Are you hurt?" he asked Simone. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Adrenaline had locked her muscles into paralysis. The driver's door was ripped open. More guards, voices overlapping. Then someone was opening her door. Riker. He appeared like something out of a nightmare. Face tight, eyes wild, still wearing his suit jacket but looking like he'd run through hell to get here. He pulled Simone out of the SUV with enough force she stumbled, and then his hands were on her face, her shoulders, searching for injuries with barely controlled desperation. "Are you hurt?" His voice sounded wrecked. "Simone, are you hurt?" "I'm fine." Her voice came out distant, shock setting in. "Ivy, my sister." Riker already had people pulling Ivy out of the car, medics appearing from somewhere, someone wrapping a blanket around the teenager's shoulders while she shook and cried. But Riker wasn't looking at Ivy. He was staring at Simone like she'd come back from the dead. His hands were shaking. Riker Kang, the man who'd stayed ice cold through their entire wedding, who treated emotions like weaknesses to be eliminated, was shaking. "I thought—" He cut himself off, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jump. When Chen called, he didn't finish the sentence, just pulled her into his chest with enough force to steal her breath, arms wrapping around her like he was trying to fuse them into one person. His heart was slamming against his ribs hard enough she could feel it, his breathing ragged. And for the first time since the wedding, Simone understood something terrifying. The man who'd spent 3 months avoiding her wasn't indifferent. He was scared. Scared of what she made him feel. Scared of what losing her would do to him. Scared that maybe the marriage had stopped being just a transaction the moment she walked down that aisle, and he'd been too damaged to admit it. Simone's arms came up slowly, hesitantly, wrapped around him, felt him exhale like he'd been holding his breath for 3 months straight. Around them, Miami's criminal underworld was about to explode into war. But for one moment, standing in a warehouse surrounded by armed guards and bullet casings, neither of them was pretending anymore. They took Ivy to a private hospital. No police, no official reports, nothing that would create paperwork trails. The Kim family doctor checked her for injuries, prescribed sedatives for shock, called their parents with carefully edited details that wouldn't cause panic. Simone stayed with her sister until Ivy finally fell asleep near 9 p.m., curled in a hospital bed with monitors beeping softly beside her. Then Riker appeared in the doorway. "She'll be safe here," he said quietly. 12 guards on this floor. No one gets through." Simone nodded without looking at him. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "We should go," Riker added. "We need to talk." They drove to a different property, some anonymous safe house on the outskirts of Coconut Grove. Single-story, bulletproof windows, surrounded by enough security to invade a small country. Inside, Riker poured them both whiskey without asking if she wanted it, handed her the glass, watched her drain it in one swallow. "Victor Chin," he said. He ordered the attack. Simone set down the glass before she dropped it. "Why?" "Because you're my wife." Riker's voice was flat. "Because he knows the fastest way to hurt me is through you." "You barely talk to me." The words came out sharp. "We've been married 3 months, and you've spoken maybe 50 sentences total." "Why would he think—" "Because I've been obsessed with keeping you safe since the day we signed that contract." Riker cut her off, voice harsh. "Because I've had teams tracking you 24/7. Because I personally vetted every restaurant, every museum, every place you've gone. Because despite pretending I didn't care, I've spent 3 months terrified that someone would figure out you're the one thing in this entire operation that could actually destroy me." Simone stared at him. He looked away, jaw tight, hands gripping the counter hard enough his knuckles went white. "I lied," he said quietly. "That night, what you heard in the library, I lied about all of it." "Why?" "Because it was easier." His voice turned bitter. "Because I've spent 15 years building a life where nothing matters except power and control. And then you walked into that first meeting wearing that blue dress and looking at me like I was still human underneath all this. And I realized you could take everything I'd built and burn it to ash without even trying." Simone's throat tightened. "That doesn't make sense." "You terrify me," Riker said, finally looking at her. "From the moment I saw you, something inside me broke. And men like me can't afford broken. We can't afford caring about someone so much that losing them would be worse than dying. The confession hung between them. So you pushed me away, Simone said slowly, kept me at distance, pretended I didn't matter, while spending every waking moment making sure you were protected. His laugh sounded destroyed. While memorizing everything you liked, everything you wanted, everything that made you smile. While lying awake wondering if I'd already ruined any chance you might eventually stop hating me. Simone crossed the space between them before she could think better of it. Stood directly in front of him, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into his features, the fear he'd been carrying, the loneliness that matched her own. I don't hate you, she whispered. Riker's eyes closed. You should. Maybe. Simone reached up, fingers brushing his jaw. But I don't. His hand came up, caught hers, held it there against his face like it was something precious. If we do this, Simone said quietly, we do it for real. No more distance. No more pretending. You don't get to protect me by shutting me out. Simone, I'm already in danger. Her voice hardened. Today proved that. So either you let me in completely, or I walk out right now and we go back to being strangers. Riker stared at her. War visible behind his eyes. Control versus surrender. Safety versus risk. The terrified calculation of someone choosing between drowning slowly and jumping into fire. Then he kissed her. Not gentle. Not careful. Desperate. 3 months of restraint and hunger and fear detonating in a single moment. His hands in her hair, her body against his, everything they'd been holding back crashing together with enough force to shatter. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Riker pressed his forehead against hers. I can't promise you soft, he said roughly. I can't promise you safe. But if you stay, I promise you real. Simone's hands fisted in his shirt. Then stop treating me like something fragile. His laugh sounded wrecked and relieved all at once. You're the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to me, Riker murmured against her mouth. Outside, Miami was descending into chaos. Inside, 2 people stopped lying about what they'd become to each other. And somewhere across the city, Victor Chin was realizing he'd just made the worst miscalculation of his life. Because the woman he'd tried to use as leverage had just become the one thing capable of turning Riker Kang into something more terrifying than he'd ever been before. Someone with everything to lose. The safe house smelled like gunpowder and expensive whiskey. Simone woke up tangled in unfamiliar sheets with Riker's arm locked around her waist like he was afraid she'd disappear if he loosened his grip. Morning light filtered through bulletproof glass, casting everything in pale gold. For 3 seconds, she forgot where she was. Then muscle memory kicked in. The attack, the gunfire, Ivy's screaming, the way Riker had looked at her like watching her die in real time. His breathing changed, still asleep but restless. She turned carefully. His face looked different, unconscious. Younger, less guarded. The harsh lines around his mouth softened into something almost vulnerable. A scar cut through his left eyebrow she'd never noticed before. Another along his collarbone disappearing beneath the sheets. Evidence of a life spent surviving. His eyes opened, locked on hers immediately. Neither of them moved. We should talk, Riker said finally, voice rough from sleep. About what? Everything I've been keeping from you. Simone sat up, pulling the sheet with her. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd hit the car door yesterday, bruise forming beneath the skin. Start with Victor Chin. Riker exhaled and pushed himself upright, back against the headboard. Ran a hand through his hair. He's been pushing into Kang territory for 8 months, started small, bribing dock workers, skimming shipments, testing boundaries. I handled it quietly, didn't want full-scale war. What changed? You. He said it flat, simple. The marriage announcement. Suddenly I had something he could target besides money and territory. Simone's stomach turned. So this is my fault? No. Riker's hand caught her chin, forced her to look at him. This is Victor being exactly what he's always been, a predator looking for weakness. He saw an opening and took it. By trying to kill me. By trying to send a message. Riker's jaw tightened. That message being I'm not untouchable anymore. Outside, voices drifted through the walls, security changing shifts, morning protocols, the machinery of protection never stopping. What happens now? Simone asked. Riker's expression went cold. Now I make sure he understands what happens when someone touches what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her, should have triggered every feminist instinct she'd cultivated through 4 years at Stanford. Instead, it sent heat straight through her chest. I want to help, she said. No. Riker, absolutely not. He stood, pulling on pants from yesterday, shoulders tight with tension. You're already a target. I'm not making it worse by dragging you deeper into this. Simone followed him out of bed, anger sharpening her voice. I'm already in it. Yesterday proved that. Hiding me away won't make me safer. It'll keep you alive. While you what? Go to war alone? Get yourself killed because you're too proud to accept help? Riker turned on her. You don't understand what you're asking, then explain it to me. Simone's voice rose. Stop protecting me through ignorance and treat me like an actual partner instead of some fragile thing you need to shelter. They stared at each other, breathing hard, energy crackling between them like live voltage. Riker's phone buzzed. Then again, he grabbed it off the nightstand, face darkening as he read the screen. What? Simone demanded. Chen just sent a debrief from last night's interrogation. His voice went flat. Dangerous. One of the shooters survived, started talking when he realized we weren't law enforcement. What did he say? Riker's eyes met hers. That Victor has someone inside my organization, someone high enough to know your schedule, security routes, everything. The words landed like ice water. A mole, Simone said quietly. Yes. How high? High enough that I can't trust anyone except Chen right now. Simone processed that. What about your captains, the men who've worked for you for years? All suspects until proven otherwise. Riker pulled on a shirt, movements sharp with controlled rage. Victor's been planning this for months. That kind of access doesn't come cheap or easy. So what do we do? We? Riker's laugh was bitter. You stay here under armed guard while I handle this. Like hell. Simone? You just told me you can't trust anyone in your organization, she cut him off. But you can trust me. I'm the one person Victor can't have gotten to because I've been locked in your house for 3 months. So either you let me help or you're working alone, and we both know that's a death sentence. Riker stared at her, war visible behind his eyes. Finally, you do exactly what I tell you. No improvising, no risks. Deal. He didn't look happy about it, but he nodded. Bad kid. They returned to the main estate 2 hours later, surrounded by enough firepower to invade a small country. The property looked the same from outside. Pristine white stone, manicured gardens, peaceful waterfront tranquility. Inside felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Riker's top 5 captains waited in his office. Men Simone had seen around the property but never spoken to. Hard faces. Calculating eyes. The kind of people who'd committed enough violence it stopped registering as abnormal. She recognized 3. James Park, head of port operations. Michael Torres, weapons and enforcement. David Lim, financial operations and money laundering. The other 2 were younger, lieutenants whose names she didn't know. All of them looked at her like an anomaly when she walked in beside Riker. Gentlemen, Riker said, voice cold enough to frost glass, we have a problem. He laid out the situation with brutal efficiency. The attack, the interrogation, the mole. Silence followed, heavy and dangerous. You think it's one of us, James Park said finally. Not a question. I think someone with access to high-level operational details sold us out to Victor Chin, Riker replied. And that list is very short. Michael Torres leaned back in his chair. Could be lower level. Someone in security. IT admin staff with system access. Could be, Riker agreed. But Chen's been running background checks on everyone with clearance for the last 6 hours. So far, nothing. David Lim's expression stayed neutral. What do you need from us? Operational freeze on anything sensitive until we find the leak. All communication goes through encrypted channels only. No meetings outside secure locations. And full transparency. If Victor's people contact any of you, I want to know immediately. Nods around the room, agreement that felt genuine but could easily be performance. Simone stood against the wall, watching, studying body language, micro-expressions, the tiny tells people couldn't fully control under pressure. James Park kept touching his wedding ring. Nervous habit or guilty conscience? Michael Torres maintained eye contact too consistently. Overcompensating? David Lim looked bored, either innocent or sociopathic enough not to care. The two lieutenants seemed genuinely confused. Nothing definitive, but something felt wrong. The meeting lasted another 20 minutes. Logistics, security protocols, contingency plans. When it finally ended and the captains filed out, Riker closed the door and turned to Simone. Well, I don't know, she admitted. They all seemed off, Riker finished. Yeah, I noticed. Could be paranoia, could be genuine. Or one of them is better at lying than I gave them credit for. He moved to the window, staring out at the bay. I've known these men for over a decade. James was there when I took over from my uncle. Michael saved my life in Atlanta during a territorial dispute 6 years ago. David's been laundering our money since before I was running operations. And now one of them might be trying to kill you. Or kill you to hurt me, which is worse. Simone crossed to him, put her hand on his arm. We'll figure it out. He looked at her hand, then her face. When did you become the optimistic one? About 30 seconds after I stopped pretending this marriage was something I could survive by staying passive. His mouth almost smiled. Almost. Then his phone buzzed. Chen. Riker answered. Talk to me. Whatever Chen said made his expression darken. When? Pause. How many? Another pause. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He hung up. What happened? Simone asked. 3 of our warehouses just burned, simultaneously. Victor's escalating. I'm coming with you. Simone, we agreed. Partnership. Riker's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. But Bishek. The warehouse district looked like a war zone. Fire trucks surrounded the burning buildings, foam and water arcing through smoke-black air. Police presence heavy but disorganized, half of them on Victor's payroll, the other half being managed by Rikers. Controlled chaos designed to look like industrial accidents instead of coordinated arson. Chen met them 2 blocks away at a temporary command post set up in an unmarked van. Total loss on all 3 locations, he reported, showing them tablet footage. Professional accelerant placement, military-grade incendiary devices, in and out in under 4 minutes. What was stored there? Simone asked. Riker's expression went dark. Automotive parts officially. Actually, pharmaceutical precursors and weapons waiting for distribution. How much product? 8 million street value. Maybe 10. Simone absorbed that. Victor's not just sending messages anymore. He's trying to cripple your operation. He's trying to start a war he thinks he can win, Riker corrected. Force me into retaliation that brings federal attention, destabilizes partnerships, makes me look weak to the other families. So what do we do? Not what he expects. Riker turned to Chen. Get me everything we have on Victor's financial infrastructure, bank accounts, shell companies, real estate holdings, offshore trusts. I want his entire economic ecosystem mapped. Chen nodded and started typing. Simone stared at Riker. You're going after his money. Violence is expected. Predictable. But if I can collapse his funding before he realizes what's happening, he loses operational capacity without me firing a single shot. That's, Simone paused, actually brilliant. That's what happens when your wife is a Stanford tech prodigy who understands system disruption better than street warfare. Riker's mouth curved slightly. You're about to become my secret weapon. Something warm unfurled in Simone's chest. Partnership. Real partnership. Chen looked up from his tablet. Sir, we have a problem. Another one? The fires weren't just about destroying product. Chen pulled up security footage. Watch this. The video showed the moments before the first warehouse ignited. A figure in dark clothes moving through the loading bay, placing devices with practiced efficiency. Then the figure looked directly at the camera, smiled, and pulled off his mask. Simone's breath stopped, because the face staring at them through the security feed was James Park. The van went silent except for the tablet audio crackling with fire sounds. That's not possible, Riker said quietly. James has been with me for 12 years. The timestamp is from 40 minutes ago, Chen replied. Footage pulls from our own security system. No evidence of tampering. Riker stared at the frozen image. James Park's face clear as daylight, expression almost apologetic as he looked into the camera before triggering the explosives. He wanted us to know, Simone said. That's why he showed his face. This was a confession. Or a setup, Riker countered. Victor could have deepfaked the footage. AI face swapping is sophisticated enough now that Occam's razor, Simone interrupted. What's more likely, Victor has cutting-edge deepfake technology and cyber warfare capabilities we've never seen evidence of, or James Park got bought and is covering his tracks by making it obvious? Riker's hands clenched into fists. If James betrayed me, I'll... His phone rang. James Park. Riker stared at the screen, then answered and put it on speaker. I assume you've seen the footage by now, James said, voice calm, resigned. What the fuck, James? Riker's voice was pure ice. I'm sorry. Pause. That's inadequate, I know, but it's true. Why? Silence. Long enough that Simone thought maybe James had hung up. Then, because he has my daughter. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Riker breathed. Victor Chin took my daughter 3 weeks ago. James's voice cracked. Madison. She's 19. Sophomore at University of Miami. She went to a party and never came home. Why didn't you tell me? Because he said if I contacted you, if I went to anyone, he'd kill her. James sounded destroyed. He sent me videos, proof of life, her begging me to do whatever he asked. Simone's chest tightened, horror mixing with understanding. What does he want? Riker asked. Information. Access. Your schedule, Simone's security details, warehouse locations, everything I've been feeding him for 3 weeks while my daughter sits in some basement terrified I'm going to get her killed. James, I know what this costs, James cut him off. I know what I've done. But she's my daughter, Riker. My baby. What would you do? Silence, because they all knew the answer. Where are you now? Riker asked quietly. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can't find me until this is over. It doesn't have to be like this. We can get Madison back. No. James's voice hardened. You can't. Because the moment you try, Victor kills her. He's made that very clear. So I'm going to keep doing exactly what he tells me until he lets her go. He's not going to let her go, Simone said, speaking for the first time. You know that, right? Men like Victor don't release leverage once they have it. Then I'll die trying. James paused. I'm sorry, Simone, truly. Yesterday wasn't supposed to happen. He promised me he just wanted information, not violence. I didn't know about the ambush until after. But you knew enough to feel guilty, she replied. Yes. Then help us. Simone leaned closer to the phone. Tell us where Victor's keeping Madison. Let us handle this the right way instead of destroying everything you've built out of desperation. I can't. James, Riker's voice softened. You've been family for over a decade. Let me help you. Breathing on the other end, ragged, broken. The old Perez warehouse, James finally whispered. South Miami, abandoned shipping facility near the port. That's where she is. At least that's where he was keeping her last week when he let me do a video call. How many guards? I don't know. I've never been there, just seen glimpses through the video feed. What else? He's planning something big, something that happens in 72 hours. Wouldn't tell me details, but he's been consolidating resources, calling in favors. Whatever it is, it's meant to end this permanently. Simone and Riker exchanged glances. What kind of ending? Riker pressed. The kind where you don't survive. James's voice dropped. I'm sorry. I've told you everything I can. If he finds out... The line went dead. Riker stood frozen, phone still against his ear. Well, Chen said after a moment, that complicates things. We're going after Madison, Riker said immediately. Sir, non-negotiable. James betrayed us, but he did it under duress. We get his daughter back. And then what? Chen asked. He still burned 3 warehouses, still compromised operational security. The other families will expect consequences. Then they'll be disappointed. Riker's voice turned to steel. James made a choice between his daughter and his loyalty. Any father would make the same choice. We handle this internally. Simone touched his arm. We need to move fast. If Victor even suspects James talked to you, He'll kill Madison to eliminate the leverage. Riker turned to Chen. Get me building schematics for the Perez warehouse. Satellite imagery. Any intelligence we have on Victor's security protocols. On it. And pull together a tactical team. People we trust absolutely. Nobody who had access to the information James could have leaked. Chen nodded and started making calls. Simone watched Riker's face, saw the war happening behind his eyes, rage at the betrayal, understanding of the impossible choice, determination to fix what was broken. You're a good man, she said quietly. He looked at her. I'm really not. You're trying to save your enemy's daughter after he burned your warehouses and almost got me killed. That's pretty good in my book. That's pragmatism. If Madison dies, James becomes either a martyr or a psychotic liability. Either way, I lose a valuable captain and gain more problems. Keep telling yourself that. Riker's mouth curved slightly. You're very irritating when you're being optimistic. You're very irritating when you pretend you don't care about people. They stared at each other. Heat and tension and something almost like humor breaking through the disaster. Then Chen called out, Boss, we've got the schematics, but there's a problem. Of course there is, Riker muttered. Chen pulled up building blueprints on the tablet. The Perez warehouse is a fortress. Single entrance in front, emergency exits sealed after the last fire code violation. No windows above ground floor. Heavy security presence based on thermal imaging. At least 25 bodies inside. So a frontal assault is suicide, Simone said. Pretty much. Riker studied the blueprints. What about the old maintenance tunnels? This facility was built in the 80s. Should have underground access for electrical and plumbing. Chen zoomed in. Possible, but if Victor knows about them, he'll have them covered. So we need a distraction. Simone leaned over the tablet, brain shifting into the problem-solving mode that had gotten her into Stanford at 16. Something that pulls security away from the girl while your team goes in through the tunnels. What kind of distraction? The kind Victor can't ignore. She looked at Riker. Me. Absolutely not. Hear me out. No. Riker's voice turned hard. I'm not using you as bait. I'm already bait, Simone countered. Victor's primary target is me, because hurting me hurts you. So let's use that. I show up outside the warehouse. He focuses resources on capturing me. Your team gets Madison out through the tunnels. And then what? You get captured? Killed? I don't actually go inside, just get close enough to trigger response. Chen's team provides overwatch and extraction before anything goes wrong. There are approximately 8,000 ways that plan fails catastrophically. Name a better one. Silence. Because there wasn't one. Chen cleared his throat. Actually, the tactical logic is sound. If Miss Vale provides external pressure while we infiltrate, it significantly improves our odds. Chen, Riker said dangerously, you're not helping. I'm being realistic, sir. This is a tactical problem that requires unconventional solutions. Riker looked between them, then at the blueprints, then at the smoke still rising from his burning warehouses visible through the van windows. If anything happens to you, he started. It won't, Simone said firmly, because you'll be there. Damn right I will. Chen pulled out his phone. I'll assemble a team. When do we move? Tonight, Riker said. Before Victor realizes James talked. Before he moves Madison or tightens security. That gives us maybe 6 hours to plan a hostage extraction from a fortified position with minimal intel, Chen observed. Then we'd better get started. Marsch hoch. They spent the afternoon planning. Simone had never been part of a military operation before. Watching Riker transform from the emotionally locked man she'd married into a tactical commander was like witnessing a completely different person emerge. He was brilliant, cold, precise. Every detail accounted for. Every contingency mapped. Talking through scenarios with Chen, marking blueprints, coordinating equipment, running probability calculations that would make Stanford's math department jealous. This was who he'd been before she'd ever met him, before the forced marriage and domestic pretending. This was Riker Kang running an empire, and it was terrifying how attractive she found it. Around 4 p.m., he called a break. They retreated to a private office while Chen coordinated with the tactical team. You should eat something, Riker said, pulling food from a bag someone had delivered. Sandwiches. Cold brew coffee. Nothing fancy but functional. Simone took the coffee. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. You'll need energy. She bit into a sandwich without tasting it. Are you scared? Terrified. The honesty surprised her. You don't look it. Years of practice. Riker sat beside her, close enough their knees touched. You learn to compartmentalize. The fear goes in a box until the operation's over. And then? Then it comes out all at once and you have nightmares for weeks. Simone studied his profile. How many operations have you run like this? Enough to know the difference between calculated risk and suicide mission. Which is this? He looked at her. Somewhere in between. Comforting. I don't deal in comfort. I deal in honesty. His hand found hers. I need you to promise me something. What? If things go wrong, if Chen gives the extraction signal, you run. No hesitation, no heroics. You get out and you let me handle it. Riker, promise me, Simone. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she wouldn't abandon him to save herself. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't negotiable. I promise, she said quietly. He exhaled, pulled her against his chest. I can't lose you. You won't. You don't know that. Neither do you. Simone tilted her head back to look at him. But we're doing this together. That's what partners means. His mouth found hers, desperate and gentle all at once. When they finally broke apart, Chen was knocking on the door. We're ready, he said. Team's in position. Equipment loaded. We move in 30 minutes. Riker stood, pulling Simone up with him. Let's go save a girl and send Victor Chin a message he won't forget. Wug. The Perez warehouse sat in industrial wasteland south of the port. Rusted shipping containers, cracked asphalt, the smell of diesel and rotting seawater. Chain-link fencing topped with razor wire. Security lights creating pools of harsh brightness against gathering darkness. Simone sat in an unmarked SUV 2 blocks away, watching thermal imaging on Chen's laptop. 28 heat signatures inside the warehouse, clustered mostly on the ground floor. 2 on an upper level, likely guards watching approaches. 1 isolated signature in what looked like a storage room. Madison. Overwatch teams in position, Chen reported through the comms system. Tunnel entry point secured. Extraction route clear. Riker sat beside Simone, checking weapons with methodical precision. Glock 19, spare magazines, combat knife, body armor concealed beneath a jacket. He looked like exactly what he was, a man preparing for violence. You remember the signal? He asked Simone for the 3rd time. 3 clicks on the radio. I run. I got it. And if anyone approaches before then, I don't engage. I fall back to position 2 where your sniper team has coverage. And if, Riker. She caught his hand. I know the plan. Stop stalling. He stared at her, war visible behind his eyes. Then he kissed her, hard and quick. I love you, he said against her mouth. The words hit like electricity, first time he'd said it out loud. Tell me again when this is over, Simone whispered back. That's a promise. Chen's voice crackled through comms. Sir, we need to move, windows closing. Riker pulled away reluctantly, checked his weapons one more time, looked at Simone like he was memorizing her face. Then he and Chen slipped out of the SUV into the darkness. Simone watched them disappear into shadows, heading toward the maintenance tunnel entrance 300 yards east. Her heart hammered against her ribs, mouth dry, hands shaking slightly. She'd never been so scared in her life. The driver, one of Chen's most trusted men, handed her a radio and a panic button. Anything goes wrong, you hit that button, he said quietly. Whole world comes running. Simone nodded, then waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Tunnel team is inside, a voice reported through the radio. Moving toward the holding area. Simone's cue. She opened the SUV door and stepped into humid Miami night air. Wore civilian clothes, jeans, dark jacket, nothing tactical. Needed to look like an easy target. Started walking toward the warehouse front entrance. 100 yards. 75. 50. Security lights hit her, making her visible. 30 yards. A door opened. 2 men stepped out, guns visible but not raised yet. That's far enough, one called out. Simone stopped, raised her hand slowly. I need to talk to Victor Chin. Yeah? He expecting you. Tell him Simone Kang is here. He'll want to know. The men exchanged glances. One spoke into a radio. 30 seconds later, the radio crackled back. Both men raised their weapons. Don't move, the first one ordered. Through her earpiece, Chen's voice, contact made, subject is responding, hold position. More men poured out of the warehouse. 6, 8, 10, all focused on her, which meant nobody was watching the tunnels. Victor wants to see you, one of the guards said, moving forward with zip ties. This wasn't part of the plan. Simone's heart rate spiked, the panic button pressed against her palm. But if she ran now, the distraction failed. Madison died. James's betrayal meant nothing. She let them approach, let them zip tie her wrists, let them start pulling her toward the warehouse entrance. Through the earpiece, Simone, what are you doing? Extraction signal is 3 clicks. Use it. She couldn't respond without giving away the comms, just kept walking. Praying Riker would find Madison before Victor Chin realized he'd just captured the one thing capable of ending this war permanently. The warehouse doors closed behind her with a sound like a coffin sealing shut. And somewhere in the darkness, Riker Kang was about to discover his wife had just sacrificed herself to save a stranger's daughter. The warehouse interior smelled like rust and fear. Simone's zip-tied wrists throbbed as guards shoved her through a maze of shipping containers and metal scaffolding. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. Her earpiece had gone silent. Either Chen had cut transmission to avoid detection, or the signal couldn't penetrate this deep into the building. She was alone. They dragged her up a metal staircase to a second-floor office overlooking the warehouse floor. Glass windows on 3 sides. Exposed. Nowhere to run. Victor Chin sat behind a desk that looked salvaged from a 1970s government building. 50 years old, silver threading through black hair, wearing an expensive suit that didn't match the surroundings. Handsome in the way venomous snakes were handsome. Beautiful until you remembered what they could do. He smiled when Simone was thrown into the chair across from him. Mrs. Kang, he said pleasantly. What an unexpected pleasure. Simone said nothing, focused on breathing, on not showing the terror clawing through her chest. Victor gestured and the guard stepped back. Not far. Just enough to create the illusion of privacy. You're wondering why I haven't killed you yet, Victor continued, leaning back in his chair. Wondering if perhaps you miscalculated by walking into my territory alone. I came to negotiate, Simone said, voice steadier than she felt. Negotiate. Victor laughed. With what leverage? Information. About Riker's operations, financial structures, everything you'd need to dismantle his empire without firing another shot. Victor studied her, eyes flat and calculating. Why would you betray your husband? Because he's using me as a shield while he wages war that's going to get me killed. Because I didn't ask for this life. Because I'm tired of being collateral damage in someone else's vendetta. The lies came easily, too easily. Victor's smile widened. You're very convincing, but I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. I'm offering you what you want. What I want, Victor said quietly, is to watch Riker Kang lose everything that matters to him. And right now, Mrs. Kang, that appears to be you. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the warehouse floor. Do you know how long I've been planning this? He asked conversationally. 8 months? Carefully positioning assets, buying loyalty, identifying weaknesses. Your husband is brilliant, I'll give him that. But brilliance has a flaw. What's that? It makes you believe you're always the smartest person in the room. Victor turned back to her. Tell me, did Riker send you here as a distraction while his team attempts a rescue operation through the maintenance tunnels? Simone's blood turned to ice. Victor's smile became something terrible. Yes, he said softly. I know about the tunnels. I know about James Park's daughter. I know about your husband's bleeding heart that makes him try to save people who betrayed him. Do you know why I know all this? He pulled out his phone, pressed a button. The office door opened, and David Lim walked in. Simone's world tilted sideways. David, Riker's financial captain, the man who'd sat in meetings that morning looking bored while they discussed the mole. David, who'd worked for the Kang family for over a decade, who'd been trusted with every secret, every account, every vulnerability. Hello, Simone, David said quietly. She couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was seeing, James was useful, Victor continued, but predictable. A father desperate to save his daughter makes obvious choices. But David here, David is an artist. Why? Simone finally managed. David's expression stayed neutral. Money, power, the usual reasons people change sides. You've been with Riker for years. I've been with whoever pays best for years, David corrected. Riker just happened to be winning until recently. But Victor made a better offer. And unlike your husband, Victor understands that loyalty is a transaction, not a virtue. Victor checked his watch. Your husband and his team should be reaching Madison's holding room right about now. David, would you like to do the honors? David pulled out a radio. Spring the trap. Through the office windows, Simone watched the warehouse floor explode into chaos. Lights blazed on in areas that had been dark. Men poured out of hidden positions, 30, 40, maybe 50 armed guards who'd been waiting in concealment. Gunfire erupted from somewhere below, the sound of Riker's team suddenly surrounded. No, Simone breathed. Yes, Victor said. Your husband walked into an ambush designed specifically for him. Every move he made tonight I knew about 30 seconds after he decided it. Every tactical position he set up, I countered. Every extraction route he planned, I blocked. More gunfire, shouting, the sounds of a firefight turning into a massacre. Simone lunged out of the chair, zip ties cutting into her wrists. Stop this! Victor's guard caught her, slammed her back down hard enough her vision sparked. The entertaining part, Victor continued calmly, is that I'm going to make you watch. Watch your husband realize his tactical brilliance meant nothing. Watch his men die protecting a girl who was never actually in danger because Madison Park has been dead for 2 weeks. The words hit like a physical blow. James doesn't know yet, Victor added. Poor man's been feeding me information thinking he's saving his daughter. Very motivated, very thorough. I'll tell him eventually, maybe. Depends on whether he survives the next few minutes. Simone's stomach turned. Horror and rage mixing into something that felt like poison. Why? She whispered. Because wars aren't won through violence, Victor said. They're won through breaking your enemy's will to fight. Riker needed to learn that protecting people makes you weak, that caring about your wife, your captains, your reputation makes you vulnerable. Tonight he learns that lesson permanently. Below, the gunfire intensified. Chen's voice crackled over someone's radio. Pin down, need extraction. Repeat, we need... Static. Then nothing. Victor smiled. I believe that's checkmate. The office door burst open. Not guards. Riker. Covered in blood. His own or someone else's, Simone couldn't tell. Gun raised, eyes wild with something between rage and terror. He looked at Simone, then at Victor. Let her go, Riker said, voice raw. Or what? Victor asked pleasantly. You'll shoot me? You're outnumbered 50-1. Half your team is dead or dying downstairs. Chen's trapped in the tunnel system, and your wife is about to watch me put a bullet in your head. Riker, it's a trap, Simone started. I know. His eyes never left Victor. I figured it out about 30 seconds after we entered the building. Then why did you come up here? Because you're here. He said it simply, like it was the only answer that mattered. Victor laughed. Touching, really, but tactically idiotic. David, take his weapon. David moved forward. Riker didn't resist when the gun was stripped from his hands. Didn't fight when guards surrounded him. Just kept staring at Simone like he was trying to memorize her face. You know what I've learned? Victor said conversationally. The best way to destroy a man like you isn't killing him. It's making him watch everything he tried to protect fall apart. Making him live with the failure. He pulled a gun from his desk drawer, aimed it at Simone. Riker moved before anyone could react. Threw himself sideways, body blocking Simone from the line of fire. The gun went off. Blood sprayed. Riker stumbled but didn't fall, hands grabbing the chair Simone was in, putting himself between her and Victor's weapon. Don't, he said, voice wrecked. Please, I'll give you anything. Territory, money, everything. Just don't hurt her. Simone had never heard him beg before. Victor lowered the gun slowly. Now that's what I wanted to see. The great Riker Kang on his knees. Riker was literally kneeling now, blood seeping through his jacket from where the bullet had grazed his shoulder. Face pale, but his body still shielded Simone. "I'll surrender," Riker said quietly. "Full territorial concession. Every port, every operation, every asset. You win. Just let her walk out of here alive." "Riker, no," Simone started. "It's okay." He turned his head slightly, meeting her eyes. "It's okay. This is how it has to be." Victor studied them, then smiled. "You know what? I believe you. I believe you'd actually give up your empire for her, which makes this so much more satisfying." He raised the gun again, not at Simone, at Riker's head. "Because you don't get to make that choice," Victor said. "You don't get to die a martyr protecting your wife. You get to die knowing you failed, knowing she'll be next, knowing this was all for nothing." Time slowed. Simone saw Victor's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Riker's eyes closing, saw David Lim watching with empty expression like this was business, not murder. And something inside her snapped. She threw herself sideways, chair and all, slamming into Victor's legs. The gun went off, but the bullet went wide, punching through the window behind them. Glass exploded. Riker moved in the same instant, grabbed David's gun from his holster, spun, fired twice. David dropped. Riker kept moving, grabbed Simone's chair, used it as a shield while he fired at the guards. Bodies fell. Return fire shattered the remaining windows. Then Chen's voice exploded over the radio. "Second team breaching now, north entrance, covering fire in 3. Explosions rocked the warehouse. Not grenades, flashbangs, smoke. Chen's backup team pouring through entrances Simone hadn't known existed. Chaos detonated. Riker cut Simone's zip ties with the combat knife he'd somehow kept hidden, pulled her behind the overturned desk as bullets tore through the office. Victor was screaming orders, guards flooding the room, Chen's team advancing from below. "Stay down!" Riker shouted over the noise. "Where's Madison?" Simone yelled back. "There is no Madison. She's been dead for weeks. This whole thing was... I see." Bullets chewed through the desk inches from Simone's head. Riker returned fire, expression locked into something beyond rage. "We need to move," Chen's voice crackled through the radio Riker had taken from David. "Buildings compromised, structural damage to the east wall." Something groaned above them. Metal stressed past tolerance. Simone looked up. The ceiling was collapsing. "Go!" Riker grabbed her arm, hauling her toward the door. Behind them, part of the roof gave way, crushing the desk they'd been hiding behind seconds ago. They ran. Down the metal stairs, Chen's team providing covering fire as Victor's men tried to cut them off. Bodies everywhere, blood on concrete, the smell of gunpowder and smoke choking the air. Someone grabbed Simone from behind. She didn't think, just reacted. Drove her elbow back into ribs, felt something crack, spun and grabbed the guard's weapon as he doubled over. Used the gun to club him across the temple. He went down hard. Riker stared at her for half a second. "Where did you learn?" "Self-defense classes in college," Simone gasped. "Didn't think they'd actually be useful." More guards. Chen appeared from nowhere, cutting through them with brutal efficiency. "Extraction vehicle is outside. North exit. Go." They ran through smoke and chaos, Chen's team collapsing around them in a protective formation. Simone's lungs burned. Her wrists were bleeding where the zip ties had cut. Adrenaline was the only thing keeping her upright. The north exit appeared through the smoke. Steel door. Daylight beyond. They were going to make it. Then Victor Chin stepped through the doorway. Alone, gun raised, everyone froze. "You don't get to walk away," Victor said quietly. "Not after everything you've cost me." His fingers started to squeeze the trigger. Chen moved first. Threw himself between Victor and Riker. The gun went off. Chen dropped. "No!" Riker's voice broke. Victor was raising the gun again, but Riker was faster, put 3 bullets through Victor's chest before the man could fire. Victor Chin died, still smiling. Riker dropped beside Chen, blood pooling beneath him. Too much blood. "Chen, stay with me." Chen's eyes were already glazing. "Get her out." "That's an order, sir." "We're not leaving you." "Yes, you are." Chen coughed, blood on his lips. "Been an honor." His eyes went empty. Simone felt something inside her chest crack apart. Riker stayed frozen beside Chen's body, hands covered in his friend's blood, face empty of everything except devastation. "Riker," Simone touched his shoulder. We have to go. Now. He didn't move. Riker. Louder now. Chen died protecting us. Don't make it meaningless. That reached him. He stood slowly, looked at Simone with eyes that had seen too much death tonight. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? Simone didn't know. For Chen. For the trap. For dragging her into a world where people died protecting each other from monsters who looked like businessmen. She grabbed his hand. Later. Grieve later. Right now, we survive. They ran through the exit into humid Miami night, SUVs waiting, Chen's remaining team piling in, engines roaring. Behind them, the Perez warehouse was collapsing, fire consuming what was left, along with the bodies of everyone who died in Victor Chin's final game. The safe house felt like a tomb. Simone sat on a couch watching the sun rise over Miami while paramedics stitched the cut on her wrist and treated Riker's shoulder wound. Around them, what remained of Chen's team moved with exhausted efficiency, securing perimeters, making calls, cleaning weapons with hands that shook from adrenaline crash. 7 men had gone into that warehouse. 3 came out. James Park wasn't among the dead. He'd vanished the moment the shooting started, probably realized his daughter was already gone, and everything he'd sacrificed meant nothing. David Lim's body was being cremated in an industrial furnace along with the rest of Victor's operation. No funeral, no ceremony. Traitors didn't get eulogies. Victor Chin was dead. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like surviving a hurricane by watching everyone around you get torn apart. Riker sat in the corner, staring at nothing. Blood still on his hands despite washing them 3 times. Chen's blood. David's blood. The blood of men who'd followed him into an ambush because loyalty meant something in a world built on betrayal. Simone crossed to him, sat down beside him without speaking. I got them killed, Riker said finally, voice empty. Walked them straight into a trap. Victor orchestrated this for 8 months. David fed him everything. You couldn't have known. I should have known. His hands clenched into fists. I trusted David, trusted him with everything. And he was selling us out the entire time. Why did he do it? Money, power. Same reason anyone betrays. Victor offered him more than I could. Riker's laugh was bitter. Turns out loyalty is exactly what David said it was. A transaction. Simone took his hand. Not everyone's like that. Enough are. Chen wasn't. He died protecting you. Riker's jaw tightened. I know. So honor that. Don't let his sacrifice mean you stop trusting everyone. How? Riker turned to her. How do I trust anyone after this? How do I know who's real and who's waiting for a better offer? Simone didn't have an answer, because she didn't know either. Around them, the safe house continued preparing for whatever came next. Phone calls to allied families. Negotiations about territory now that Victor was dead. The machinery of empire rebuilding itself even while bodies were still warm. What happens now? Simone asked. Now we deal with the consequences, Riker said. Victor's territory will fracture. Other families will try to claim it. We'll spend months defending what we just barely held on to. And us? He looked at her. What do you mean? Do we go back to the estate, pretend this didn't change everything? I don't think anything will ever be the same again. Good, Simone said quietly. Because I can't go back to being the decorative wife who doesn't ask questions. Not after tonight. Riker studied her face. You killed a man tonight. I defended myself. You were good at it. I was terrified. That's what makes it real. He pulled her against his chest, arms wrapping around her like she was the only thing anchoring him to the world. I'm sorry for all of this, for dragging you into a war you never asked to fight. I walked into that warehouse myself, Simone pointed out. Nobody forced me. You did it to save Madison, who was already dead. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. James destroyed his entire life for a daughter who'd been gone for weeks. Victor played him perfectly. Victor played all of us. But we survived. Simone tilted her head back to look at him. Barely. But we survived. Riker's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. You sound surprised. I am. 3 months ago, I was a Stanford dropout who'd never seen real violence. Now I've been in 2 gunfights and counting. Welcome to my world. I hate your world. So do I. Riker kissed her forehead. But it's the only one I have. And you're the only thing in it worth protecting. The words should have felt romantic. Instead, they felt like a death sentence. Because Simone understood now what being Riker Kang's wife actually meant. It meant being a target forever. It meant watching people die protecting her. It meant living in a beautiful prison surrounded by guns and paranoia and the constant calculation of who might betray you next. The question was whether she could survive it, or whether eventually this life would hollow her out until she became another casualty of a war that never actually ended, just changed battlefields. Outside, Miami was waking up. City full of people living normal lives where the biggest violence was traffic and the worst betrayals were workplace gossip. Simone closed her eyes and tried to remember what that felt like. Failed. Because somewhere between the wedding and the warehouse, she'd crossed a line that didn't allow retreat. She'd become someone different, someone harder, someone who could kill without hesitation when survival demanded it. And the most terrifying part was realizing she didn't regret it. She regretted Chen dying, regretted James losing his daughter, regretted the violence and waste and destruction. But she didn't regret surviving, didn't regret protecting Riker, didn't regret choosing this life, even though it was destroying the person she used to be. Riker's phone buzzed. He answered without moving. Talk. Whatever the person said made his expression harden. When? Pause. How many? Longer pause. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up, looked at Simone. Federal investigation just opened into last night's events. Warehouse fire, bodies, gunfight that lit up police scanners across Miami. They're calling it gang warfare. Are we in trouble? We're always in trouble. Question is whether they can prove anything. Riker stood, pulling her up with him. I need to meet with my lawyers. Make sure our story's airtight. Can you handle giving a statement if they come for you? What's the story? That we were never at that warehouse. We were home all night, together. Chen died in a car accident. David Lim went missing after embezzling funds. Victor Chin's death is unrelated to us entirely. They won't believe that. They don't have to believe it. They just have to fail at proving otherwise. Riker touched her face. Can you do this? Simone thought about everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. The trap. The betrayal. Chen dying. Victor's smile as he tried to kill them both. Thought about the zip ties cutting her wrists and the gun in her hands and the way she'd felt nothing watching that guard drop. Yes, she said, I can do this. Because she didn't have a choice. Because going back wasn't possible anymore. Because the only way out was through whatever came next, and that meant becoming exactly the kind of person who could lie to federal investigators while standing over the graves of men who died for her. Riker kissed her. Then let's go face the consequences. They walked out of the safe house into Miami sunshine. Behind them, the wreckage of Victor Chin's war. Ahead, the federal investigation that would either destroy them or forge them into something unbreakable. And somewhere between those two impossible futures, Simone Val Kang stopped being the girl who'd walked down an aisle she never chose, and became the woman willing to burn the entire world down to protect what was hers, even if that meant losing herself completely in the process. The federal investigation hit like a sledgehammer wrapped in subpoenas. 2 days after the warehouse massacre, FBI agents showed up at the estate with enough legal paperwork to bury them. Simone watched through the living room windows as black SUVs rolled up the driveway, men in suits stepping out with badge cases and warrant folders. Riker's lawyers had been preparing for this. 24 hours of coaching sessions, memorizing timelines, rehearsing answers until the lies felt more real than the truth. Remember, the lead attorney had said, a woman named Patricia Chen, no relation, who'd defended organized crime families for 30 years. You don't remember, you weren't there, you have no knowledge of events. Repeat those 3 phrases like prayers. Simone didn't believe in prayers anymore, not after watching Chen die protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. The lead FBI agent was a man named Marcus Webb, 45, graying at the temples, eyes that had seen enough criminal enterprises to recognize one on sight. He sat across from Simone in Riker's office while lawyers flanked both sides and recording equipment captured every word. Mrs. Kang, Webb began, voice professionally neutral. Can you tell me where you were on the night of May 15th between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m.? At home, Simone said, kept her voice steady, hands folded in her lap to hide the trembling. With my husband. Here at this residence? Yes. Can anyone corroborate that? Our household staff, security personnel, multiple witnesses. Webb consulted his notes. Your security detail logged you returning to the property at approximately 10:30 p.m., but phone records show your cell phone pinging towers near the Perez warehouse district during the time frame in question. Simone's lawyer leaned forward. My client is not required to account for her phone's location. Perhaps it was in someone else's possession. Was it? Webb asked Simone directly. I don't know, Simone replied. I wasn't at the warehouse, so if my phone was there, someone else had it. Who? I couldn't say. Webb studied her. 4 people died in that warehouse. 17 others sustained injuries. The property sustained over $2 million in structural damage. And you're telling me you have no knowledge of any of this? That's correct. Despite the fact that your husband's organization has been engaged in territorial disputes with Victor Chin's syndicate for the past 8 months? Patricia cut in immediately. Agent Webb, unless you're prepared to provide evidence directly linking my client to criminal activity, these questions constitute harassment. Webb's jaw tightened. Victor Chin is dead, shot 3 times at close range with a weapon registered to one of your husband's security personnel. I'm sorry to hear about Mr. Chin's death, Simone said carefully, but I don't know anything about it. Your husband's financial director, David Lim, is also missing, as is James Park, head of port operations. Both men connected to your organization, both men last seen the night of the warehouse incident. I'm not responsible for the whereabouts of my husband's employees. But you are married to Riker Kang, a man with documented connections to organized crime, money laundering, weapons trafficking, alleged connections, Patricia interrupted. Never proven in any court of law. Webb ignored her, kept his focus on Simone. How does it feel, Mrs. Kang? Being married to a man whose business associates keep turning up dead? The words landed like a punch. Simone met his eyes. My husband is a legitimate businessman. If you have evidence suggesting otherwise, charge him. Otherwise, this conversation is over. Patricia stood. My client has cooperated fully. Unless you have further questions directly related to provable criminal activity, we're done here. Webb stared at Simone for a long moment, then gathered his files and stood. This investigation isn't over, he said quietly. We'll be watching. Every transaction, every meeting, every move your family makes, and eventually you'll make a mistake. Then I guess you'll be watching for a very long time, Simone replied. Webb left with his team, footsteps echoing through the marble foyer. When the door closed, Simone's hands finally started shaking. Patricia packed her briefcase with efficient movements. You did well. Better than most first-timers. I lied to federal investigators, Simone said. That's a felony. Only if they can prove you lied, which they can't. Your story is airtight, witnesses corroborated, phone records explained. Nothing connects you directly to that warehouse. Except the truth. Patricia looked at her with something between sympathy and exhaustion. The truth doesn't matter in cases like this, only what can be proven. Remember that. She left, taking her 6-figure hourly rate with her. Simone sat alone in Riker's office, surrounded by expensive furniture and original artwork, and the suffocating weight of everything she'd become. And cheats. Riker's interrogation lasted 4 hours. Simone wasn't allowed in the room, but she watched through security camera feeds from the estate's surveillance office, watched him sit across from Webb with perfect composure, answering every question with the rehearsed precision of someone who'd done this before. Where were you the night Victor Chin died? At home with my wife. Can you account for the whereabouts of your security personnel? They follow their assigned protocols. I don't micromanage schedules. James Park worked for you for 12 years. Now he's vanished. Any idea where he might be? None. If he's missing, I hope he's found safely. His daughter was kidnapped weeks ago. You had no knowledge of this? James never mentioned it. If he was dealing with a personal crisis, I'm sorry I wasn't able to help. Sorry enough to orchestrate a rescue operation that resulted in multiple deaths? I have no knowledge of any rescue operation. On and on, Webb pushing, Riker deflecting, a dance they'd both performed before with different partners. Finally, Webb leaned back. You're good at this. I'll give you that. But eventually, the lies catch up. They always do. Then I suppose I have nothing to worry about, Riker said, since I'm not lying. Webb left without charging him, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. When Riker emerged from the interrogation, he looked exhausted. The kind of bone-deep tiredness that came from maintaining perfect control while everything inside screamed. Simone met him in the hallway, wrapped her arms around him without speaking. He held her like she was the only real thing in a world built on deception. It's not over, he said quietly. Webb will keep digging. He's convinced he can break us. Can he? Not if we're careful. But careful required trust, and trust was the one commodity they couldn't afford anymore. Suk. The funeral happened 3 days later. Chen's family had disowned him years ago when he'd chosen Riker's organization over legitimate work. No wife, no children, just a brother in Seattle who wanted nothing to do with the body. So Riker arranged everything, private ceremony, no press, just the surviving members of Chen's team and the handful of people who understood what he'd sacrificed. They buried him in a cemetery outside Coral Gables, beneath oak trees that filtered sunlight into gold patterns on grass. The casket was simple. Chen would have hated anything elaborate. Simone stood beside Riker while a non-denominational officiant, carefully selected to avoid any specific references, read generic words about service and loyalty and sacrifice. The words felt hollow. Chen deserved better than hollow words. When it was over and the casket was lowered into the ground, Riker stayed behind while everyone else filtered away. Simone waited with him, hand in his, while he stared at the fresh earth. He saved my life 6 times, Riker said finally. Maybe more. I lost count after Atlanta. He loved you, Simone replied. In whatever way men like him are capable of loving. I got him killed. He made a choice. Don't take that away from him by making it about your guilt. Riker's jaw tightened. How are you so calm about this? I'm not calm. I'm numb. There's a difference. He looked at her. You've changed. I had to. Simone squeezed his hand. The girl you married wouldn't have survived the last 2 weeks. So I became someone else. Do you regret it? She thought about that. About the Simone who'd walked down the aisle 3 months ago, scared, angry, trapped. About the Stanford dropout who dreamed of building tech startups instead of surviving gang warfare. No, she said quietly. I don't regret surviving, but I regret what surviving cost. They stood there until shadows grew long across the cemetery, until Simone's feet hurt and exhaustion pulled at her bones. Finally, Riker turned away from the grave. Let's go home, he said, but home didn't feel safe anymore. Home felt like waiting for the next attack, the next betrayal, the next impossible choice that would carve away another piece of who they used to be. Egg. The real war started 2 weeks later. Victor Chin's territory didn't stay empty long. 3 different crime families moved simultaneously to claim it. The Italians from New York, a cartel operation out of Colombia, and a local crew that had been waiting years for this opportunity, which meant Miami descended into violence that made the last month look like a rehearsal. Drive-by shootings, warehouse bombings, bodies turning up in the bay with execution-style bullet wounds. The FBI investigation intensified. More subpoenas, more surveillance, more pressure designed to force mistakes. And through it all, Simone and Riker held together through sheer stubborn refusal to break. They moved operations, changed security protocols, eliminated anyone whose loyalty seemed questionable, turned the Kang organization into a fortress that trusted no one outside its smallest inner circle. Simone stopped pretending she wasn't part of it. She sat in on strategy meetings, analyzed financial records, identified vulnerabilities in rival operations using the pattern recognition skills that had made her a Silicon Valley prodigy. Where Riker saw violence and territory, Simone saw systems and leverage points. The Italians are overextended, she told him during a meeting with his remaining captains. They're funding operations through loan sharking networks that depend on street-level collection, disrupt the collection infrastructure, and their cash flow collapses. How do we disrupt it? Michael Torres asked. He'd survived the warehouse and emerged more cautious, less certain. We buy the debt, Simone said. Acquire the lending operations through shell companies, then forgive the loans. Torres stared at her. That's psychological warfare, Riker finished, looking at Simone with something between admiration and concern. Their collection enforcers lose credibility, their funding evaporates, their soldiers defect to operations that actually pay. It'll cost us, Torres pointed out. Less than a prolonged territorial war, Simone countered, and it destabilizes them without putting bodies on the ground that the FBI can trace back to us. Silence around the table, then nods. The strategy worked. Within a week, the Italian operation started fracturing. Within 2, they'd withdrawn from Miami entirely, cutting losses rather than bleeding resources. One enemy down. The cartel was harder. They didn't operate on loans and street-level loyalty. They operated on fear and supply chains that ran from Colombia through Mexico into Florida. We can't compete with their distribution network, Torres said during another strategy session. They've got ports, trucks, planes, infrastructure we'd need years to build. So we don't compete, Simone said. We expose them. To who? Everyone? She pulled up files on her laptop. The cartel stays invisible by keeping operations fragmented. Different people handling different pieces, but they're consolidating Miami routes through a central distribution hub. If we can identify that hub and feed information to the DEA anonymously, we turn federal law enforcement into our weapon, Riker said slowly. Exactly. Let the government do the heavy lifting. The cartel gets raided, their Miami operations collapse, and we benefit without direct involvement. Torres looked uncomfortable. That's using federal agencies feels smart, Riker interrupted. It's smart, and it keeps our hands clean for the ongoing FBI investigation. The plan took 3 weeks to execute. Simone tracked financial transactions, shipping manifests, communication patterns, built a complete map of the cartel's Miami infrastructure, then anonymously leaked it to every relevant federal agency. The raids happened simultaneously across 12 locations. The DEA seized over $100 million in product and arrested 47 people. The cartel's Miami presence evaporated overnight. 2 enemies down, which left the local crew. They were different, smaller, more desperate. Led by a man named Eddie Reyes who'd grown up in Liberty City, watching families like the Kangs build empires while he fought for scraps. Eddie didn't want territory or money. He wanted revenge on the system that had excluded him, which made him the most dangerous enemy yet. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday afternoon. Simone was at a coffee shop in Coconut Grove, public location, heavy security, theoretically safe. She'd been meeting with Ivy, trying to maintain some connection to normal life while everything else burned. Her sister had been talking about college acceptances, oblivious to the violence reshaping Miami's underworld. Then the windows exploded. Not gunfire. An actual explosion. The coffee shop's front wall disintegrating in a blast of fire and shrapnel that threw Simone backward into tables and chairs. Her ears rang, vision blurred, tasted blood. Somewhere, Ivy was screaming. Simone forced herself upright. The security team was already moving. 2 were down, the rest forming defensive positions around her and Ivy. Through the smoke and chaos, men poured into the coffee shop. Not professionals, street soldiers, armed with pistols and rage. Eddie Reyes walked in behind them, 30 years old, lean and hard, scar running down the left side of his face, eyes that had seen too much poverty, too much injustice, too much exclusion to care about consequences anymore. Simone Kang, he said, voice surprisingly calm given the carnage around them. The tech genius turned mob wife. You know what you represent? Simone shielded Ivy behind her. I represent someone who's about to watch you die if you don't walk away right now. Eddie laughed. Your security's outnumbered, your husband's across town, and I've got enough firepower to turn this place into a crematorium, so maybe lose the attitude. One of Simone's guards raised his weapon. Eddie's crew opened fire. The guard dropped. 3 security personnel left, against 10 of Eddie's soldiers. Simone's mind raced, calculating odds, exit routes, leverage points. Nothing good. What do you want? She asked. Justice, Eddie said simply. For every kid who grew up watching families like yours control everything while we starved. For every opportunity you took because you were born into the right bloodline. I didn't choose this life. But you're living it now. Eddie moved closer. You're profiting from it, making it stronger with your Stanford degree and your clever strategies. You think buying debt and exposing cartels makes you better than Riker? You're worse. You're smart enough to know better and doing it anyway. The words hit harder than they should, because he wasn't entirely wrong. So what's the end game here? Simone asked. Kill me? Start a war with the Kangs that ends with you dead in a week? Maybe, Eddie agreed. But I'll die knowing I hurt the people who deserve hurting. His finger tightened on the trigger. Simone closed her eyes, heard the gunshot, waited for the pain. It didn't come. She opened her eyes. Eddie was stumbling backward, blood blooming across his chest. Behind him, one of Simone's guards, the youngest one, barely 22, was lowering his weapon with shaking hands. Eddie's crew opened fire. The young guard dropped instantly. Then chaos erupted. Simone grabbed Ivy and dove behind the counter as bullets chewed through the coffee shop. Her remaining security returned fire. Bodies fell. The ringing in Simone's ears intensified. Ivy was sobbing, clinging to her, blood everywhere. The smell of gunpowder and espresso mixing into something nightmarish. Then Riker's voice cut through her earpiece. Hold on. I'm 2 minutes out. Longest 2 minutes of Simone's life. Eddie was down, but his crew kept fighting, desperation and rage making them reckless. One charged the counter where Simone and Ivy were hiding. Simone grabbed a broken chair leg and drove it into his knee. He screamed and fell. She grabbed his gun and shot him without hesitation. Ivy stared at her in horror. No time to process that. More attackers. Her last remaining guard went down protecting them. Simone was alone with the stolen gun and her terrified sister in 10 seconds before Eddie's crew finished reloading. Then the coffee shop's back wall exploded inward. Not an explosion. Riker's armored SUV crashing through brick and plaster. Doors flew open. Riker emerged with Torres and a tactical team, weapons raised. The fight lasted maybe 30 seconds. Eddie's remaining crew tried to surrender. Riker didn't accept. When it was over, 12 bodies littered the coffee shop. Eddie Reyes was still alive, barely, bleeding out near the counter. Riker crossed to Simone, hands on her face, searching for injuries. You're okay, he said. Not a question, a command. You're okay. Simone nodded. Couldn't speak, shock setting in. Ivy was still crying, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Torres was already on the phone. Cleanup crew, now, before police response. Eddie coughed, blood on his lips. You didn't win anything, Riker turned to him. I won her. That's everything. He raised his gun. Don't, Simone said quietly. Riker looked at her. Not in front of Ivy, Simone added. Please. Something softened in Riker's expression. He nodded to Torres, who moved Ivy outside quickly. Then Riker turned back to Eddie. This is mercy, he said. Remember that. One shot. Eddie Reyes stopped breathing. Simone stared at the body. Felt nothing. Just empty mechanical calculation. 3 enemies eliminated. Miami stabilized. Federal investigation ongoing, but manageable. They'd won. So why did it feel like losing? The cleanup happened with terrifying efficiency. Bodies removed, evidence sanitized, witnesses paid off or intimidated. By the time actual police response arrived 20 minutes later, delayed by mysterious communication failures, the coffee shop looked like a gas leak explosion. Tragic accident. No bodies. No weapons. No evidence of gang warfare. Simone and Ivy were transported to a private hospital, treated for minor injuries and shock, given sedatives. When Simone woke up hours later, Riker was sitting beside her hospital bed. Ivy? She asked immediately. Safe. At your parents' house with a security detail. She's processing. Processing the fact that her sister had killed someone in front of her. She's terrified of me, Simone said. She's terrified for you, Riker corrected. There's a difference. Simone sat up slowly. Everything hurt. How bad is the FBI situation? Bad. Webb knows this coffee shop wasn't a gas leak, but he can't prove it. We've got witnesses placing you there as a civilian victim. Eddie's crew has no connection to us that's traceable. How long before he finds something? Maybe never. Maybe tomorrow. We're walking a tightrope. Simone leaned back against the pillow, stared at the ceiling. I killed someone today. You defended yourself. I didn't feel anything. That's what scares me. I shot him and felt nothing. Riker took her hand. That's shock. It'll hit later. What if it doesn't? What if I've become the kind of person who can kill and feel nothing? Then you've become the kind of person who survives in this world. He squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. I never wanted this for you. Neither did I. Simone looked at him. But here we are. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Riker spoke. The Miami territories are stable now. No more immediate threats. We can breathe for the first time in months. Until the next threat. Until the next threat, he agreed. Is this it? Is this the rest of our lives? Endless cycles of violence and survival? Riker didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was careful. I can't promise you peace. This world doesn't allow it. But I can promise you that I'll spend every day trying to build something better. Something beyond just survival. What does that look like? I don't know yet. He touched her face. But I know it starts with you, with us, with refusing to let this life turn us into monsters. I think I'm already a monster, Simone whispered. Then we'll be monsters together. He kissed her gently. Outside the hospital room, Miami continued spinning. Federal investigations, criminal enterprises, families fighting for territory and power. But inside that room, two people who'd been forced together by violence and strategy held on to each other like drowning victims finding solid ground. I love you, Simone said. Meant it, despite everything. Maybe because of everything. I love you, Riker replied. Enough to burn this entire city down if it meant keeping you safe. That's terrifying. That's the truth. And somewhere in the difference between those two statements lay the answer to everything they'd become. Not heroes, not villains, just two people trying to survive impossible circumstances without losing themselves completely in the process. Whether they'd succeed remained to be seen, but they'd survive. Together. No matter what that survival cost. 3 weeks after the coffee shop massacre, FBI agent Marcus Webb sat across from Simone in a federal interrogation room with enough evidence folders to fill a filing cabinet. This wasn't the estate anymore. This was downtown Miami field office. Cold fluorescent lighting, metal table bolted to the floor. Two-way mirror reflecting Simone's exhausted face back at her. Patricia Chen sat beside her, expensive briefcase open, legal pad covered in notes. We've been investigating your family's operations for 6 months, Webb began. No preamble this time, no pretense of courtesy. Victor Chin, Eddie Reyes, the warehouse fire, the coffee shop explosion, 17 deaths connected directly or indirectly to your husband's organization. My client has already answered these questions, Patricia said. Your client has lied about these questions, Webb corrected, but that ends today. He opened the first folder. Security camera footage, not from the warehouse or the coffee shop, from a bank in the Cayman Islands. Simone watching David Lim transfer funds 3 months before his death. This is you, Webb said, meeting with David Lim to discuss offshore accounts used for money laundering. We have the full transaction records, shell companies, fake invoices, the entire financial infrastructure. Simone's stomach dropped. Patricia's expression stayed neutral, but her hand tightened on her pen. That meeting was about, Simone started. Don't. Webb held up his hand. Don't insult both of us with another lie. We have everything. Bank records, communication intercepts, witness testimony from 3 different sources. You've been actively involved in your husband's criminal enterprise for months. Silence filled the interrogation room like water rising. Here's what happens now, Webb continued. You cooperate fully. Testify against Riker Kang and everyone in his organization. In exchange, we offer immunity and witness protection. Absolutely not, Simone said immediately. You'll go to prison, Webb replied. Federal charges, money laundering, accessory to murder, obstruction of justice. You're looking at 20 years minimum. Then I'll serve 20 years. Patricia touched her arm. Simone, let's discuss this privately. No. Simone kept her eyes on Webb. I'm not testifying against my husband. Even if it means sacrificing your entire future? Especially then. Webb leaned back, studied her. You really love him. After everything, the violence, the lies, the bodies, you actually love him. Yes. Why? Simone thought about that. About the man who'd pushed her away to protect her, who'd carried her through gunfire, who'd killed to keep her alive and would do it again without hesitation. Because he's the only person who's never pretended with me, she said quietly. In a world built on lies, he gave me truth, even when that truth was ugly. Webb closed the folder. Then you're going to prison, both of you. So be it. Patricia stood. This interview is over. You're charging my client or we're leaving. Oh, we're charging her, Webb said. Arraignment is tomorrow morning. Enjoy your last night of freedom, Mrs. Kang. But shag. Simone sat in the back of the car while Patricia drove toward the estate, mind spinning through impossible calculations. How bad? She asked finally. Very bad, Patricia replied. The Cayman footage is damning. Combined with everything else they've built over 6 months, they have enough for conviction. What are my options? Testify against Riker, or go to prison. That's not an option. That's a death sentence disguised as a choice. Patricia glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I've been doing this 30 years. Never seen anyone turn down immunity for someone else. Not when the evidence is this solid. Then you've never represented anyone actually in love. Love doesn't keep you out of prison. Maybe not, Simone agreed, but it keeps you human while you're there. They drove in silence through Miami traffic, sun setting over the bay, painting everything in gold and shadow. Beautiful city hiding ugly truths beneath paradise aesthetics. At the estate, Riker waited in his office. He knew. Somehow, he always knew. Webb offered you immunity, he said when Simone entered. Not a question. Yes. You turned it down. Yes. Riker stood, crossed to her, hands on her face, eyes searching hers with desperate intensity. Why? He asked, voice breaking slightly. Why would you throw your life away for me? Because it stopped being just your life the moment I decided to stay. Simone covered his hands with hers. We're in this together. That's what partnership means. Partnership means I protect you. Partnership means we protect each other. She pulled him closer. I'm not abandoning you to save myself. That's not who I am anymore. Who are you? Riker asked. Because you're not the girl I married 3 months ago. I'm the woman you made me, Simone replied, for better or worse. He kissed her, desperate and gentle, like she was slipping through his fingers and he was trying to hold on. When they broke apart, Riker pressed his forehead against hers. I won't let you go to prison for me, he said. You don't get a choice. Yes, I do. Something in his voice made Simone pull back. Look at him. What did you do? She asked. I made a deal. What kind of deal? Riker moved to his desk, pulled out a folder, handed it to her. Inside were documents, legal agreements, signed confessions, financial records, evidence of every crime the Kang organization had committed for the last decade, all signed by Riker Kang. I gave Webb everything, Riker said quietly. Full confession, complete cooperation, names, dates, transactions, everything they need to dismantle the organization. Simone stared at the documents. In exchange for what? Your immunity, your freedom, complete exoneration. Riker, it's done. His voice was final. The deal's already signed. You walk away from this. Live your life. Go back to Silicon Valley. Build the startups you should have been building all along. While you what? Go to prison for the rest of your life? While I pay for my choices. Riker's expression was carved from stone. I dragged you into this world. I'm getting you out. Simone's hands shook, rage and terror mixing into something that felt like grief. You didn't ask me, she said. I didn't need to. Yes, you did. Her voice rose. You don't get to make that choice for me. We're supposed to be partners. Partners protect each other, Riker cut her off. Even when that protection means making impossible choices. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. The deal's done. Webb agreed to drop all charges against you in exchange for my full cooperation. Then I'll refuse the deal. It doesn't require your consent. Riker's voice softened. It's over, Simone. You're free. She stared at him. at the man who'd become everything. Husband, partner, the person who'd shown her parts of herself she never knew existed. "I don't want to be free without you," she whispered. "Yes, you do. You just don't realize it yet." He touched her face. "Go live the life you were supposed to have. The one where you change the world instead of just surviving it." "I can't." "You will." He pulled her into his chest, held her while she shattered against him. "You'll hate me for a while. Then you'll move on. Find someone decent. Build something beautiful. And eventually you'll realize I gave you the greatest gift possible." "Which is?" "A future." Simone pressed her face against his shirt, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feeling of his arms around her. "I love you," she said. "I know." His voice broke. "That's why I'm letting you go." Rashonk. The arraignment happened at 9 a.m. Simone sat in the courtroom gallery while Riker stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit that looked obscene on someone who'd spent 3 months in Tom Ford suits. Webb presented the evidence, Riker's signed confession, financial records, testimony that would dismantle not just the Kang organization, but connected families across the East Coast. The judge set bail at $50 million. Riker didn't post it. "I'm not running," he told the judge. "I'm accepting responsibility." Sentencing was scheduled for 8 weeks later. Riker would remain in federal custody until then. The gavel fell. Guards led him away. He looked back once, found Simone in the gallery, mouthed, "I love you," then disappeared through the side door. Simone sat frozen while the courtroom emptied. Patricia touched her shoulder. "The immunity paperwork is ready," she said gently. "You just need to sign." "I can't." "Simone, I need time." "There is no time. Webb wants this closed by end of week." Simone stood, left the courthouse without signing anything. Outside, Miami heat hit like walking into a furnace. Tourists walked past, oblivious, life continuing like the world hadn't just ended. Her phone buzzed. Text from Ivy. "I'm sorry." Then another from her mother. "We need to talk." Another from Torres. "Some of us are still loyal, if you need anything." Simone ignored them all, drove to the estate alone, walked through rooms that still smelled like Riker's cologne, sat in his office surrounded by evidence of a life built on violence and strategy and the desperate attempt to protect what mattered. Found a letter on his desk, her name written in his handwriting. She opened it with shaking hands. "Simone, by the time you read this, I'll be in federal custody. You'll be angry. You should be. I made a choice that affects both of us without consulting you, but I need you to understand why. 3 months ago, I married a stranger because consolidating territory mattered more than my personal happiness. I told myself it was business, strategy, nothing more. I was lying. The moment I saw you, something inside me recognized something inside you. 2 people who didn't fit in the worlds we'd been born into. 2 people capable of being more than what circumstances demanded. You terrified me, still terrify me. Because you made me want things I'd spent 15 years convincing myself were impossible. Safety, partnership, love that didn't come with strings attached. I pushed you away because caring about you meant vulnerability, and in my world, vulnerability equals death. Then you almost died anyway, and I realized the cruelest joke, that pushing you away didn't protect you. It just meant I'd lose you while pretending I never wanted you in the first place. These last few weeks, watching you transform from someone surviving my world into someone mastering it, I've never been more proud or more terrified. Because you're brilliant, capable, strong enough to build empires or tear them down. And you deserve better than spending your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when the next attack comes. Better than prison. Better than me. So I'm giving you what I should have given you 3 months ago, a choice. Walk away. Use your immunity. Go back to Silicon Valley. Build the companies you were meant to build. Change the world the way you were always supposed to. I'll serve my sentence knowing I gave you back your future. And if someday, years from now, you think of me occasionally, not with bitterness, but with the understanding that I loved you enough to let you go, that'll be enough. You made me human again, Simone. Even if only for 3 months, even if only in the spaces between violence. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. Yours always, Riker Simone read the letter 3 times, then burned it in the fireplace and watched the ashes drift up the chimney. 2 weeks later, Simone sat across from Marcus Webb in his office. "I want to renegotiate the deal," she said. Webb raised an eyebrow. "The deal's already done." "No, the deal you made with Riker is done. I'm offering you something better." "I'm listening." Simone pulled out a flash drive, set it on Webb's desk. "This contains financial records for every criminal organization connected to the Kang Empire. Not just Miami, Atlanta, Savannah, Charleston, New York. Complete infrastructure for operations you didn't even know existed." Webb picked up the drive. "How did you get this?" "I've spent 3 months learning how my husband's organization works. I know every account, every shell company, every political connection. I can give you everything." "In exchange for?" "Reduced sentence for Riker. Minimum security. Possibility of parole in 10 years instead of life." Webb studied her. "Why would I agree to that? I already have Riker's confession." "Because his confession only covers the Kang organization. Mine covers everyone connected to it. You'll dismantle criminal infrastructure across the entire East Coast. Make your career. Probably get promoted to DC. And you? I serve 5 years. Whatever facility you put me in. Full cooperation, complete transparency." "You'd go to prison voluntarily?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because 10 years from now, Riker gets out, and I'll have served my time. And maybe we get a second chance at the life we should have built from the beginning." Webb leaned back in his chair. "You really are in love with him." "Destructively," Simone agreed. "But that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I'm complicit. I helped build what he created. I made it stronger, smarter, more dangerous. I don't get to walk away pretending I was just a victim. Most people would take the immunity and run. I'm not most people." Webb was quiet for a long time. Then, "I'll need to verify the information on this drive." "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." The verification took 3 weeks. When Webb called her back to his office, his expression was different. Respect, maybe. Or recognition of something he hadn't expected. "This is legitimate," he said, holding up the drive. "You weren't exaggerating. This could take down operations we've been investigating for years." "So we have a deal?" "Modified terms? Riker serves 12 years minimum security. You serve 3 years. Both eligible for parole based on continued cooperation." 15 and 5, Simone countered. "He gets 3 additional years. I get 2. That way, when we're both out, I'm 28 and he's 53. Still time to build something." Webb stared at her. "You're negotiating for him to serve more time?" "I'm negotiating for balance. He gave up everything to protect me. I'm giving up enough to prove I'm not just accepting his sacrifice passively." "You're insane." "Probably," Simone agreed. "Do we have a deal?" Webb extended his hand. "We have a deal." They shook. The sentencing hearing happened 6 weeks later. Simone sat at the defendant's table beside Riker for the first time since the arraignment. He looked thinner, exhausted. When he saw her sitting there in an orange jumpsuit matching his face went through a dozen emotions too fast to track. "What did you do?" he whispered. "What I should have done from the beginning," Simone replied. "Took responsibility." "Simone." The judge entered before he could continue. The proceedings took 2 hours. Webb presented both confessions, both cooperation agreements, evidence of crimes that would take months to fully prosecute. The judge listened without expression, then sentenced Riker Kang to 15 years federal prison, sentenced Simone Vale Kang to 5 years, both eligible for parole based on cooperation. The gavel fell. Riker grabbed Simone's hand under the table, held it so tight her bones ached. "You weren't supposed to do this," he said. "Partners," Simone replied. "Remember? This ruins your life." "No, this gives us a life. Eventually, when we've paid what we owe." The guards approached to separate them. Riker pulled her into a kiss that tasted like salt and desperation and promises they might actually keep. "I'll wait for you," he said against her mouth. "You'd better," Simone replied, "because when we get out, we're building something real. No violence, no crime, just us." "Deal." They were pulled apart. led to separate transport vehicles. Simone watched through the window as Riker's vehicle disappeared into Miami traffic. Gone, but not forever. Just for now. Federal Correctional Institution, Coleman, Florida. Minimum security. Clean facilities. Educational programs for inmates willing to use their time productively. Simone threw herself into every program available: business courses, technology certifications, coding classes taught by volunteers from tech companies. She wrote letters to Riker twice a week. He wrote back. Careful words monitored by prison officials, but real underneath the censored language. "I'm learning to build legitimate businesses," she wrote. "When I get out, I'm starting a consulting firm. Help companies identify system vulnerabilities. Legal white hat stuff. Turns out all those pattern recognition skills work just as well for helping people as hurting them." "I'm proud of you," he wrote back. "Keep going. Don't wait for me. Build the future you deserve." "I'm building the future we deserve," she corrected in her next letter. There's a difference. Ivy visited monthly, still scared, still processing, but slowly rebuilding their relationship. "You saved my life," Ivy said during one visit. "In that coffee shop. You could have run and you didn't." "You're my sister," Simone replied. "Running was never an option." "Mom and Dad are ashamed." "Good. They should be. They sold me into this life. At least I chose how to survive it." Ivy smiled slightly. "You're different now. I'm who I was always supposed to be. Just took some hell to figure that out." Torres visited once. Told her the Kang organization had dissolved completely. Federal prosecution had torn it apart. Most of the territory was consolidated under legitimate businesses now. "Some of us went straight," he said. "Open security companies, consulting firms. Turns out we're actually qualified for legal work." "Chen would be proud," Simone said. "Yeah, he would." 3 years passed like water moving slowly over stone, eroding old shapes into new ones. Simone was released on a Tuesday morning with $200 and a bus ticket. Patricia met her outside the prison. "I've set up a consulting firm under your name," she said. 3 clients already lined up. Tech companies wanting security audits. You start next week if you want." "I want." Simone looked at the Florida sky. Free sky. "Thank you for everything. Thank me by staying out of trouble." "That's the plan." Simone moved into a small apartment in Coral Gables. Nothing fancy, clean, safe. Hers. Started her consulting firm. Discovered she was brilliant at identifying system vulnerabilities. Companies paid 6 figures for her insights. Visited Riker every month. Watched him age in prison with strange grace. The violence leaking out of him gradually, replaced by something quieter. More human. "I'm reading a lot," he told her during one visit. "Philosophy, history, trying to understand how I became what I became." "Find any answers?" "Some. Mostly I'm learning that people aren't just one thing. We're all capable of terrible acts and beautiful ones, sometimes simultaneously." "That's very profound for a crime boss." "Former crime boss." He smiled. "Now I'm just a middle-aged man trying to figure out redemption." "How's that going?" "Ask me in 12 years. Ding. 12 years later, Riker Kang walked out of federal prison into Florida sunshine. Simone waited outside in a car she'd bought with legitimately earned money. 33 years old now. Successful businesswoman. Reputation rebuilt through careful work and refusing to let her past define her future. Riker looked older, grayer, lines carved deeper into his face, but his eyes were clear, present, free. He climbed into the passenger seat, stared at her for a long moment. "You waited," he said, voice full of wonder. "I promised I would. 15 years ago, I married a stranger. Now I'm sitting next to someone I'm not sure I even know." "Good," Simone replied. "Because the people we were don't exist anymore. We get to decide who we become next." She drove him to a house she'd bought in Coconut Grove. Small, modest by their old standards, but clean and safe and entirely theirs. "I have a spare room set up for you," she said. "No pressure. We take this slow. Rebuild trust. Figure out if the people we've become can actually work together outside of crisis." Riker looked at the house, then at her. "You really thought this through." "I had 15 years to think about it." They went inside. Simone showed him around, the kitchen, the office, where she ran her consulting firm, the garden she'd planted. "It's not the estate," she said. "Thank God," Riker replied. "That place was a fortress. This is a home." They stood in the living room, afternoon light filtering through windows. Two people who'd survived hell together trying to figure out what came after. "I don't know how to do this," Riker admitted. "The normal life thing. I've been a criminal since I was 22. "I don't either," Simone said. "But we'll figure it out. Together? Together." He stepped closer, touched her face the way he had 15 years ago in a warehouse while Miami burned around them. "I still love you," he said, in case that wasn't clear. "It was clear?" Simone smiled. "I love you too. The actual you, not the crime boss, not the person you had to be to survive. Just you. Just me isn't very impressive. Just you is everything I need." He kissed her then, gentle, patient, like they had all the time in the world now, because they did. No more violence, no more federal investigations, no more impossible choices between survival and humanity. Just two people who'd been forged in fire and somehow emerged still capable of building something beautiful. Gaskik. 5 years later, Simone sat on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over Miami. Riker emerged from inside carrying 2 glasses of iced tea, handed her one, sat beside her on the porch swing they'd installed last summer. "Ivy called," he said. "She's bringing her boyfriend by next weekend." "The marine biologist?" "That's the one. Apparently he wants to ask my permission to propose." Simone laughed. "You're not exactly a traditional authority figure." "No. But I'm family. That counts for something." Family. Strange word for what they'd become, but accurate. Ivy had forgiven them, slowly. Built her own life while maintaining connection. Now taught environmental science at University of Miami and spent weekends rehabilitating injured sea turtles. Simone's consulting firm had grown. 15 employees. Contracts with Fortune 500 companies. Reputation solid enough that her past was seen as cautionary tale rather than disqualifying factor. Riker worked construction. Physical labor that kept him grounded. Came home exhausted but satisfied in ways empire building never achieved. They'd married again 2 years ago. Small ceremony, just Ivy, Patricia, and a retired judge who'd agreed to officiate. This time, Simone walked down the aisle by choice. This time, Riker looked at her like she was the beginning of something instead of the end. "Do you ever miss it?" Simone asked now. "The power, the control." "Sometimes," Riker admitted. "Then I remember what it cost. The people who died, the years in prison, the person I had to become." He looked at her. "This is better. This is real. Even though we're boring now? Especially because we're boring." He pulled her against his side. "Boring means nobody's trying to kill us. Boring means we get to grow old together. Boring is the most radical thing we've ever done." Simone rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad we survived." "Me too. Think it's really over? The violence, the past?" "I think the past is always with us," Riker said quietly. "But it doesn't have to define us. We get to decide who we are now. And I choose this. You, us. The boring, beautiful life we've built from the ashes." They sat in comfortable silence while Miami settled into evening, city lights flickering on across the bay, world continuing its endless spin. Somewhere in that city were people making the same choices they'd made, building empires on violence, destroying lives for power, caught in cycles that felt impossible to escape. Simone thought about the girl she'd been at 23, scared, trapped, angry at circumstances beyond her control. Thought about the woman she'd become, scarred but whole, complicit but conscious, strong enough to choose redemption over revenge. "You know what I learned?" she said. "What?" "That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone willing to become better because of you. And being willing to become better because of them." Riker kissed the top of her head. "That's very wise for a former criminal. I read a lot in prison. It shows." They laughed. Small moment of joy in a life built on accumulated small moments. Because that's what healing looked like. Not dramatic transformation, not sudden enlightenment, Just two people choosing each other every day despite knowing exactly what that choice cost. The sun finished setting. Stars appeared. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Emergency, crisis, the endless drama of human suffering. But on this porch, in this house, with this person, Simone felt something she'd thought impossible 15 years ago. Peace. Hard-won and fragile and real. "I love you," she said. "I love you," Riker replied. "Think we'll be okay?" "I think we already are." And somehow, against every odd, despite every mistake, in defiance of every circumstance that should have destroyed them, they were. Not perfect, not innocent, but alive, together, free. And that was enough, more than enough, everything. The city continued spinning, empires rose and fell. People made choices that would haunt them or save them or do both simultaneously. But in a small house in Coconut Grove, two people who'd survived hell sat together in the darkness and decided that maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it was about accepting what you'd been while building what you could become. Maybe it was about choosing love even when love demanded sacrifice. Maybe it was about finding someone willing to walk through fire with you and still choose to build something beautiful from the ashes. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it was just about surviving, together, one day at a time, until surviving became living, and living became everything they'd never dared to hope for.